You're listening to the Lanterns Radio Network. We are the network dedicated to empowering the individual, illuminating the truth, defending American exceptionalism, and inspiring future generations. Stay connected and get involved at lanterns.buzz. For great radio, get commentary and news of the day. Lanterns.buzz.
You know, I wish we could find some way to hold people accountable. Free speech is a great idea, but we're in a war.
To make sure the economy doesn't collapse, I've abandoned free market principles to save the free market system.
In this present crisis, government is not the solution to our problem. Government is the problem.
You're listening to Common Sense Radio with A.J. Davis on the Lanterns Radio Network.
Folks, you're listening to Common Sense Radio on the Lanterns Radio Network. I have a treat in store for you tonight. I have the one, the only, Chris Salcedo. Chris, how are you doing tonight?
Mr. Davis, thank you very much for the invite. I'm doing well, thank you.
So I wanted to bring you on because I love listening to your show. I love your fire. I think you're a major figure in the conservative movement that is promoting liberty nationwide, and you're being of Hispanic background, can go at the liberals hard, and they don't know what to say to you. They can't claim racism on you. They can't claim any of their talking points. What makes you get up every morning and want to fight them, bringing their hands to the fire?
Well, the defeat of their ideology is primarily my goal. The liberal ideology that has been adopted, the anti-American liberal ideology adopted by the Democrat Party, is dangerous. Every single time it has been adopted throughout human history, it has led to the death and the destruction of societies and millions of people. Red China, 65 million people. Soviet Russia, over 6 million. I think my number might be a little bit low with the latest numbers that I've seen on Soviet Russia. But the Cuban failure, every single time Democrat policies are implemented to their fullest extent, which is communism and collectivism, it is ruinous for a society and for a people. It is the subordination of a belief in inalienable rights given to us by God. And it instead focuses on the only God that really I believe that liberals and progressives worship, which is the God of government, centralized control and a centralized governing authority. That is dangerous to human freedom and liberty, and that's why I believe they deserve to be defeated, and that's why I get up every morning and do what I do.
I feel the same way. I always say conservatives worship Jesus, worship God, and liberals worship government. And to me, I don't understand it. I mean, I understand why they do it, because control is the main recipe in their arsenal. That's what they want to do. They want control of every aspect of their life. And myself being just a millennial, and I'm raising 3 young children, and I preach to them, work hard, you don't worship anything but Jesus, and you go out and you do the right thing. And they're going into public education is just destroying the family, destroying the culture. I mean, the progressivism has destroyed the NFL. I love how you have been just destroying the NFL on Twitter almost daily.
Well, let's be clear. The NFL is destroying itself.
Yes,
and they're doing it, and they're doing it happily. They're doing it joyfully. They've made their millions. They've made their billions. By building up a patriotic, pro-American audience, and they feel comfortable now with their money reserves. They can give their audience the bird and say, you know what, we really don't like America here in the National Football League. We don't like what you stand for. We don't. So we're going to kneel and disrespect the flag. We're going to disrespect the country, and we're going to disrespect the anthem. And look, I just point out that their ratings are failing, and this is all by design. They think they can put together a successful league off of the anti-American crowd. Good luck with that.
Yeah, they don't stand a chance. And the center, one of the things that really they're going to find out at the end of this year is how much money they're losing. Their TV ratings are already down. What did they say? $500 million they've lost just this year, and 20% decline in viewership. I grew up in Virginia, right outside D.C. I remember growing up with my grandma watching the Washington Redskins. I'm the biggest Redskin fan you can believe. But whenever they started taking their knees and they started disrespecting America, I have not tuned in for 1 second, and I refuse to. And I'm big into fantasy football. Well, was because I refuse to have my kids, have myself be a part of something as destructive as they are becoming.
No, I have similar memories. I love football. Don't get me wrong, I love football. And I used to love the NFL. One of the fondest memories growing up was watching the Detroit Lions play and most often lose because they're my granddad's team. I'm a Dallas Cowboy fan. I used to be a Chargers fan before they gave a middle finger to their fan base by moving to Los Angeles. And don't get me started on the Chargers. But
I won't.
Look, to be quite frank, it has been a part of my life for 20 or 30 years. And in the course of one season, the National Football League has successfully turned me, one of the most adamant NFL football fans, into one that resents what they have done and what they have done to football. So now I guess I watch the TCU Horned Frogs. It's the only football that's worth watching these days in my view.
I agree 100%. College football is where it's
There you
more
go.
interesting. You know, they're not promoting their social justice warrior pick of the week.
Yeah. I agree.
So, did you see the ruling from the courts about the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau? I think that is fantastic. That was my opinion of what was going to happen. I thought Mick Mulvaney was going to be held up, that he was going to be the director, and it was just a typical liberal clickbait for them to push that. Wouldn't you agree?
Yeah. Well, it's so much more than that. The Consumer Financial Protection Bureau represents the single greatest threat to this democracy to date. Its structure is unconstitutional. It derives its funding from the Federal Reserve, not from the Congress appropriations process, which would give our elected representatives oversight. There is no oversight. It is the closest thing to a dictatorial power that was imposed on this country by the Democrats. It has no accountability. And look, if you look at what the CFPB did, it said inside of this law that the current director can appoint his successor. So Obama appoints Cordray. That means Cordray, who's a left-wing extremist, just like Obama, would be able to appoint another left-wing extremist. So that means only left-wing extremist Democrats in perpetuity would be in charge of the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, which is now surpassed the IRS as the most powerful and dare I say unaccountable. It is unaccountable agency in our federal government. The Federal Vacancies Reform Act basically supersedes the Dodd-Frank legislation that created the CFPB, because the CFPB legislation did not override the Federal Vacancies Reform Act when it was passed and signed into law, nor does it override the Appointments Clause in the U.S. Constitution. So the federal court came out, last week, and basically said, hey, look, I don't care what the CFPB provision in Dodd-Frank says. It didn't countermand the Federal Vacancies Reform Act, and it didn't countermand the Constitution. And the president, the chief executive, the president has the right to make this appointment, and your leftist is going to be out in the cold.
I love it. I'm so happy for that. I want to switch gears and go into the members of Congress that are just, it's coming out almost so daily that they've had some sexual misconduct. And Susan, who can't be with us tonight, she and I discussed on last week's show that maybe an investment for us is to get blow-up dolls for the members of Congress, and we'll be paying out less money for these improprieties that these members of Congress are committing, because it's disgusting to me. It's absolutely disgusting.
chances are you're paying for it already. Those
that's true.
bills. Hey, we had no idea this thing existed, did we? We had no idea that Congress said, "Oh, we're going to create a system." And notice I didn't specify party. Congress said, you know, it'd be a great idea is if we had a system to where we would try to make it so onerous on those claiming sexual harassment or sexual misconduct. We set up this system. And, oh, by the way, if the person runs the gauntlet and still comes out the other end, then we get to force them into a 30-day arbitration, completely silent. Nobody knows. And then if they won't go away, then we can use taxpayer money to pay them off as hush money and make them sign a non-disclosure agreement and then make sure they're never around Capitol Hill ever again and they lose their careers. Some Republican and Democrat shook hands and dedicated our money. And it is absolutely disgusting. It's just like the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau. The Republican Party rolled over for that and allowed Barack Obama and his left-wing extremists to victimize all of their constituents. Republican Party is just as culpable in this atmosphere of permissibility and no accountability up on Capitol Hill as are the Democrats.
I agree 100%. 100% agree with you, Chris. So the next thing I want to cover is how do you feel about sanctuary cities, and do you think they present a legal battle that may reach the Supreme Court someday in the future?
Oh, I know that for a fact because the great state of Texas, where I broadcast from, is in a pitched battle right now. They passed an anti-sanctuary cities bill, the first of its kind in the country, to basically say, hey, you know what? If you're a Democrat, and typically it's a Democrat who wants to release illegal alien felons back on the streets to harm Americans, we're not going to let you do that anymore. And then, you know what? If you do decide to do it, then we're going to hold you accountable as an elected Democrat. Well, Democrats never like being held accountable. So they're suing, of course. It has passed the first couple of hurdles. It will ultimately end up in the Supreme Court, where it will be upheld because it is not permissible for the local municipalities or state governments to countermand federal immigration law. If you receive a detainer order from the federal government, then you are obliged to comply. And then if they don't comply, then I think that money ought to be used to force compliance. These Democrats in these sanctuary cities have been getting away with lawlessness for far too long, and they need to be held accountable. They are not above the law, and they need to be given the proper instruction, if you will, as to that fact.
Absolutely, 100%. Well, Chris, could you tell everyone where they can find you at social media?
Well, the easiest place to go is chrissalcedo.com, ChrisSalcedo.com. You'll find the 2 radio shows in Houston and Dallas, and a TV show, which is on the Vita television network that is on the East Coast and on Roku and Fire Stick, if you get those. It's called the Chris Salcedo Show Worldwide. So that's basically it. That's the one-stop shop for the all things Chris Salcedo Show.
Awesome. And what would you tell to someone like me who's up and coming in the business and kind of just broadcasting out of my house for Lanterns? You know, we're all self-funded, and we're trying to promote a pro-American website and talking points or our opinion, our perspective to get out to the masses. What would be your advice to us?
Keep on doing what you're doing. Keep on spreading the word. Utilize this gift that is social media. It can be a sewer, but it can also be a gift. And utilize all of your talents, branch out, listen, learn, and continue to pass on the message. We outnumber them, and I'm talking about those who are anti-American and progressive extremists. And notice I didn't specify party. Progressive extremists out there. We need to be that voice, and we need to inspire accountability. The number one lament that I have for the American people is this: you get the government you deserve, and with through efforts, programs like yours, Mr. Davis, individuals will be prompted to engage. And there's a Latin saying called "Quis custodies ipsos custodiae." Who watches the watchers? That's got to be us. We have to. It's part of a government of, by, and for the people. We've got to keep them in check. And through programs like yours, you can inspire that to happen.
Thanks so much for coming on the program tonight, Chris. I really appreciate it. I hope, if anything I can do to help you out, I would be more than willing to. keep doing what you're doing, and we really appreciate you coming on Common Sense Radio tonight.
Merry Christmas, man.
Merry Christmas.
Hi, we're the Bells of Liberty. You can listen to us on Lanterns Radio Network.
New shows air every Saturday at 6 p.m. Eastern.
You can find us on Spreaker, SoundCloud, iTunes, Google Play Music, and iHeartRadio, and on Twitter at Bells of Liberty. See you then.
Hi, it's Blake Johnson, and you can listen to my show, The Blake Johnson Program, every Monday evening at 9/8 Central on lanterns.buzz. Here, I'll delve into the news of the day and anything related to politics, movies, music, faith, and more. Nothing is off limits. This is our meeting ground for conservatives, libertarians, Christians, all liberty lovers. The Blake Johnson Program, every Monday evening at 9/8 Central, only on lanterns.buzz.
Hey everybody, I'm Matt Holloway, host of the HoloNet podcast on the Lanterns Media Network from Phoenix, Arizona. And you can catch our show every week live at 4 p.m. Pacific Time, 7 p.m. Eastern. For those of you who live in Central Time, I don't know what that is because I don't feel like doing math. No, I'm kidding. It's 6 p.m. Central Time, 4 p.m. Pacific, 7 p.m. Eastern, every Sunday here on the Lanterns Media Network, where we hold the line against the night and lift up our light to shine it into the darkness. Don't miss it. Again, that's the HoloNet podcast here on the Lanterns Media Network.
Hello, America. Michael Murphy, Voice of Reason here. I hope you'll join me Thursday evenings live at 8 o'clock Eastern, 7 o'clock Central. See you there.
Welcome to the program, folks. You're listening to Common Sense Radio on the Lanterns Radio Network. And I have a treat for you today. I have the chance to interview State Rep Julie Parrish from Oregon House District 37. How are you, Representative Parrish?
I'm well, thank you.
So I wanted to bring you on because you have been a fierce advocate against the Senate bill that was the health care tax to health insurance. And you have the Stop Healthcare Taxes Referendum 301. And if we have time, we could talk a little budget, House Bill 3391 and PERS, if you're able. But can you tell me and the listeners about when the special election is and more about this referendum and why it's a bad thing for the state of Oregon?
So it was a House Bill 2391, that the goal was to fund Medicaid. And, you know, I tell folks, if our goal was to somehow, undo Medicaid or kick 350,000 people off of their health care that the state funds, we would have referred the entire bill to the voters. The fact is we left hundreds of millions of operable dollars that have now actually become law under House Bill 2391. And we only pulled out the parts that are really egregious. We were able to gather 90,000 signatures. We turned in almost 85,000 of those. Turned the signatures in and qualified for the ballot. And now the election will be on January 23rd. And it's Measure 101. And we're urging voters to vote no. Because a yes vote upholds the tax increases that the legislature just passed. And the no vote says, no, we don't want a sales tax on our health care. So we pulled out 4 pieces of tax policy in the bigger bill, and then a piece of more philosophical policy around whether or not insurance companies should be able to pass the tax directly onto the ratepayer. So there's a tax on PEB, which is the public employee benefit plans, that really was just money that got sucked out of the general fund. We said, nope, we're not interested in that. Let's let voters vote on that. There's a tax on insurance premiums. And who's paying those premiums? It's about 217,000 Oregonians who buy their own health care inside or outside of the exchange. They don't have an employer to pay for it. They may or may not qualify for a tax subsidy under the Affordable Care Act. In fact, only 41% of those 217,000 even do. It's about 12,000 college students who have to have a plan because they live on our campuses. There are about 15,500 small group employers. They're not all for-profit businesses, mind you. They're the local Head Start in your community, or even your church. If the church buys health care for the pastor and their family and other church employees, they're in that small group market. They're subject to this tax. Then there are large group employers who have more than 50 employees. The biggest purchaser of healthcare inside the large group market is actually our public schools. So it will collectively take $25 million in a form of a tax out of our K-12 school budgets. We found that absolutely objectionable. While big corporations, unions, and insurance companies, because they self-insure, they were not included in the bill. Legally, they could have been, but we didn't include them. So we're asking half the state to pick up the tab on Medicaid, and the state the half that's arguably struggling to pay their own bills, while we left out the other half that could pay help pay those bills, and gave them a free pass. And so we just found that the tax was horribly unfair. And then the Section 8 of the bill says, well, we'll let insurance companies pass that tax on. So it's not even a tax on insurance companies. Many of Oregon's insurance companies that just this month posted very large profits to their bottom line, even as they're pulling out of communities and creating these insurance monopolies where you only have one choice in your community anymore for 15 counties where Regents Insurance, for example, just pulled out of the market. There's two other tax components. One's very complicated, but it's a tax on the Medicaid providers themselves. And then the other is a tax on the net revenues of some of the larger hospitals in the state. And that's only going to drive up hospital costs. And so we find that all objectionable and have said, we just think voters should vote. And so we're giving them the chance and we're asking them to vote no in January.
I completely agree with you. And I'll be voting no 100% along with my brother-in-law works for a small company in Newburgh, and their insurance rates since the Affordable Care Act has just skyrocketed.
It's insane.
I'm sorry?
It's insane. We've talked to people who've, small businesses and their small group is like 7 people, and they've seen a 73% rate increase. It's not affordable.
No, not at all. And it's just something that's the danger of tax of. I don't know if you feel this way, but sometimes an overreaching government trying to suck every dollar that it can to spend on things that are not necessary.
Well, because of course the way to make healthcare cheaper is to tax it, right? I mean, that's their philosophy. And I hope that Oregon voters sort of see through that shenanigans. It's troubling when you have the headlines that we have right now. All right, all the waste and fraud in the Medicaid system, the millions of dollars of overpayments. It's just this mess. And it's like, yet taxpayers are being treated like an ATM machine. Just give us more money so we can clean up the messes we made, and we'll sweep these messes under the rug until the next mess comes along. And I just don't think it's fair. And, people are like, oh, you're going to throw these folks off health care. My own nephew's on the Oregon Health Plan. Dr. Hayden is a dentist who provides services to low-income health care, and he runs a charitable health nonprofit that provides free health care to people. And he spends a lot of time in his own personal resources to do that. And so, we're trying to actually make sure that every dollar that goes in for Medicaid, if you're truly eligible and qualified for it, that you actually make sure it gets to the people who it's supposed to serve, not these Medicaid profiteers who put millions of dollars into politics with our own tax dollars being spent against us, who have, created huge net worth inside these for-profit Medicaid organizations, so much so that one of these Medicaid organizations actually created so much equity in their company with our tax dollars that they sold to an out-of-state corporation for $130 million. We're just like, we want reform, and we want to make sure that every dollar we spend on healthcare gets to a needy patient who needs it.
It just sounds common sense to me. It really does.
Well, I'm hoping voters, believe that, and that they or take the time to get engaged and learn about this. Because, of course, we're having a January election. Normally this election would have been in November. And so we're running around the state right now trying to talk to as many, League of Women voter groups and editorial boards. But it's a very compressed election season over a holiday. You've got Christmas and New Year's and everything else in between sort of stacked in here. And so the yes for healthcare taxes side, they are going to spend $2 million. A lot of it is our own Medicaid dollars to try to get you to vote yes. We're sort of the little engine that could campaign, and we just kind of keep chugging and puffing up the mountainside. And, and we're just talking to voters. We're out trying to talk to as many voters as we can because your ballot's actually going to land in your mailbox right after New Year's Day. And so if you're traveling this year, we want you to make sure you go to your county offices and get an absentee ballot. You don't want to miss this election because really, Mike, I've got colleagues who are in that, healthcare is a basic human right. Okay, if healthcare is a basic human right, why the heck are we taxing it? I mean, it's just like, to me, it's like taxing food or taxing, water or taxing, kind of those life necessities that we all need. And yet my colleagues have no problem doing it. And we have a legal opinion that says that, basically, especially if we've overfunded Medicaid, anything that we have over budgeted and overfunded, you can sweep those dollars and use them on anything else. And so we really are disturbed by the fact that our healthcare dollars for the first time ever are now out of the lockbox and freed up to pay for PERS or pay for, solar panels on people's swimming pools or whatever nonsense the legislature spends money on. And that's a real line item expenditure, solar panel for swimming pools. Don't
really?
laugh.
Where is that at?
The tax credit. I'm like, if you can buy afford a swimming pool and a solar panel to put on it, you certainly don't need my tax credit to help pay for it. So, so that's our frustration. I mean, we're just common sense folks out there trying to help people understand taxing healthcare won't save the system. And it's super complicated, and we get it. And it's hard to, pick up and really learn about it in the 25 days or whatever before ballots are out. But, we want voters to feel like they can go on our Facebook page at Stop Healthcare Taxes and, come and get us questions asked and answered. They can call us. My phone number is published in the voters pamphlet. I actually want people to feel like they can pick up the phone, call me, get me directly. It's 503-432-9707. That's my personal cell. I'm giving it out to anybody who wants to get truly informed about this, because I'm one of the only people in the legislature, in the House side, who still remembers the very beginning conversations of implementing the ACA. I was on that committee that year, and I've watched us systematically, whether you believe in the Affordable Care Act or Obamacare, whatever you want to call it, whether or not you like that plan, we have broken that plan in this state. $300 million on Cover Oregon, $300 more million on new software. The state agency wants $88 more million on software, hundreds of millions of dollars of overpayments because we had a backlog for eligibility, more millions of dollars on just, mismanagement overall. And then you want to tax on top of it. It's just enough's enough.
Absolutely. And just looking at your website, the Stop Healthcare Taxes, is that .com?
Yep.
I mean, you got almost 90,000 people in 90 days. I think that was incredible. And it was very informative. So then I had, so if this bill goes down, what's the next step? I saw that you had 3 alternative bills that you were the chief sponsor of.
Yep.
Which one do you think is best for Oregonians? I personally like House Bill 3130, and I work for the public schools. I mean, it's something I personally think is the best one. But I wanted to see, since you know the nitty-gritty of each bill, which one do you think is best for Oregonians?
So the 3130, that's the exchange bill, right?
Correct.
Put public employees in exchange. So that's the one I've actually brought back personally for the short legislative session. And I like that more than putting public employees into coordinated care organizations, which, by the way, is actually already the law. We passed a law in 2011 that said that once we created coordinated care model for people in need on Medicaid, that we would actually do that same thing for people in the public sector. And, Governor Kitzhaber believed that would save $1 billion. I believe putting people in the exchange saves us $1 billion. I like the 3130 and whatever number, it'll get a new number in February. I like that best because it then actually aligns us with the Affordable Care Act. It says, okay, here's what the Affordable Care Act thinks is, fair compensation for health care. Because understand, in the Affordable Care Act, there's also this Cadillac tax. It's coming in the next biennium. And essentially what that is anything we pay for health care more than what the federal government says is, fair, is going to be subject to a 40% tax. That is, every public employer in the state of Oregon is going to get whacked with that tax. And it'll just be millions and millions of dollars that are sucked out of Oregon's budgets back to the federal government, and we'll never see that money back. So I like this bill, largely the idea of putting public employees into the exchange. I used to work for a school district. I ran the school lunch program, and I had women who served lunch who, was really just was working in the school district to buy the insurance. From an income perspective, they would qualify if we put them into the ACA. They'd qualify for those federal tax breaks. And so, you could save your local school district some dollars that way. You'd bring down the overall cost of the health care. You would put more lives into the exchange to balance out the risk pool so that everyday Oregonians who do not have an employer and who are out buying their own health care would actually get better rates that way without an expensive insurance company giveaway called a reinsurance program. And then you essentially save in a biennium about $1 billion in overall health care costs. Those are real dollars that the way the bill's written, you could you would be required to put half of that money aside for when healthcare costs in the ACA roll up and the value of the plans roll up. Then you just roll that up too, and you'd have a bucket of money to pay that. The other half of the savings from what we're currently paying for healthcare, the way that 3131 bill is designed, would be to go for other employee-related costs, which could include PERS payments and buying down the PERS liability costs with that, and essentially get through that generational PERS issue of that very expensive Tier 1 type plan that we know we've got 20 to 30 years left of that liability. And the way I think you do it is you balance out the budget through making changes in the public employee health care cost side. If you reduce the cost of and pressure on budgets, you free up money for Medicaid. So it's use this savings to solve some budget issues on the public employer side, frees up general fund to keep paying for Medicaid.
Awesome. That $1 billion would tremendously help with the PERS and the budget hole, because I remember you guys going into the legislative session, and a lot of people were disappointed that there was, especially on the Republican side, that there was no solution for PERS. And alone, some of the school districts were taking $15 million hits this year and looking like almost every year it's going to increase. What do you see the future solution for PERS is with the legislature?
Well, we get two bills in the short session. So I have one very complicated healthcare bill. I have one very complicated PERS bill.
You are putting their feet to the fire, and I love it.
Well, you know what? I'm sensitive to the whole issue around public retirements and public health care. My husband was in the military. He gets a pension from the federal government. We have TRICARE, which isn't the best insurance in the world, but we're grateful to have it. You can't be the head of OHSU and get a $66,000 a month PERS payment for life. A month. $66,666 PERS payment per month. And, it takes, just to generate that kind of payout every month, you need to have at least $20 to $25 million going full tilt in the, investments just to make his payment for one person. So, we need some PERS capping. We can do that. We need to get out from under sort of the defined benefit piece and move more over to a defined contribution and bump those contributions up. But, if you can start buying down the PERS unfunded liability over time, you can actually put more money into people's retirement accounts. I think you also need to start giving people flexibility with their dollars. The healthcare bill that I have also says, look, we'll give you as an employee, we'll give you a defined amount of money if you already have healthcare, say through your spouse. Maybe you should be using that in a pre-tax account for daycare. Maybe you should be using that to pay down your student loans. Maybe you could use it to, put more money in your own retirement account instead of saying, well, we're only going to spend this money and you're locked into having it for healthcare. When I worked in the school district and my husband had insurance, I'd would have had money for daycare. I had 3 kids in daycare. So, if we can free up and rethink those benefits to help them be more customized to what somebody actually needs in their life, I think that also finds us ways to have savings. So they're complex bills, but I also believe both bills are totally legal. So, we always hear with PERS, you can't make changes to PERS because of the, sort of constitution issue around a contract is a contract. And I think for the large part that's true, but there are things we actually can do that I think are legal that we can take us moving forward and then take some pressure off of the PERS system. If you got out of PERS, if you're the Senate, minority leader and you get out of PERS, you worked for PERS, for 6.5 years in the 70s or 80s, and you come back in and you're still, 20 years later and you're still tier 1. That doesn't make any sense. You had all this gap in the private sector. If you moved from Nike to Intel, you wouldn't get to have that kind of, guaranteed commitment. So, we believe that if you, the contract should be to the organization who hired you. If I worked for the Westland-Wilsonville School District, which I did, my PERS doesn't automatically or shouldn't automatically translate, 10 years later to the legislature. It's a different job. It's a different contract. And so we think that there's just some things we can do that are common sense, that help bring down those costs and that make the process more thoughtful and honor the public employees with a fair retirement. But, $66,666 a month is not fair.
No, not at all. And I agree with you. And is Governor Brown working with the legislator right now to come up with some common sense bills? I mean, she was doing her state tour with House Bill 3391, which was the landmark $10.2 million bill, puts insurers, taxpayers on the hook for abortion co-pays and deductibles. Is she doing anything about PERS or the budget or anything like that?
No, I'm sorry. I really wanted to come in and like Kate Brown, the first day she was sworn in, I, went and had given her like a little, welcome gift. And, I was like, I really am hopeful. I'm crossing my fingers. And, she's making me nostalgic for John Kitzhaber, and that's a problem.
Wow.
So, because at least Kitzhaber was willing to get in and kind of roll up his sleeves and fight for a deal and fight for some compromise. And we didn't always love everything he was doing. But you could at least, kind of come to some conclusion that Governor Kitzhaber was actually trying to bend cost curves. And Governor Brown is just out spending money like a drunken sailor. And so whether it's $10 million for mandatory abortion, $55 million for Cover All Kids, $100 million for raises for SEIU. I mean, you said it earlier in the interview, we came in and there was this big budget hole. Okay, well then let's not do any new spending. But we did hundreds of millions of dollars of new spending. And our concern is, going back to the, Measure 101, you created a mechanism whereby you could take taxes out of the health care and use it for those non-Medicaid expenditures. And that's what we're really mad about, is that they created a backdoor way to fund pet projects like this, and they're putting it on the backs of our healthcare dollars.
I just find it atrocious. And I thank you for the hard work you're doing down in the legislature. Is there anything actually one last thing. Are there big dollars behind your no on 101, and are they giving you guys big problems, like any threats or anything like that?
Well, so there's big dollars behind the yes on 101.
I mean the yes. I'm sorry, not the no. I'm yes. I apologize.
No,
I got that. Yeah,
no
on 101, everyone. We want you to vote no, not yes.
Vote no, and we are, we've largely self-funded this out of our own money. We have a few on our side. We have some business owners who are going to pay the tax. We have some business owners who aren't going to pay the tax and actually felt really strongly like that wasn't fair. And so they've put in to help us, shut this down. On the yes side, they have publicly committed that they are going to spend, as much as $2 million in the next 50 some days to try to convince you that a sales tax on healthcare is the right thing to do, because otherwise 350,000 people will die on January 24th. I mean, that's just not going to happen. How are they being funded? Where does that $2 million come from? It comes from our healthcare dollars. It comes from Medicaid, for-profit Medicaid PACs that have washed money into, political campaign PACs. And so, there was a $25,000 donation to the yes side from Greater Oregon Behavioral Health. They are a Medicaid accepting, organization that is, all their money is largely government dollars, basically.
Yeah, it seems like
it. And they're a nonprofit. You can't see my air quotes, but they're a nonprofit. And, who puts $25,000 of our Medicaid money into politics instead of putting it into the people in rural Oregon who are struggling right now to even keep mental health providers in their communities, but they can afford $25,000 for politics. I just think that's disgusting. We really need reform around that. Mitch Greenlick, who's the Democratic chair of the Healthcare Committee, he actually had a bill that said would ask voters to say no to, or say yes to ban campaign finance where these organizations that are getting our tax dollars then turn around and use them to politic. And his own party shut him down. And I would have absolutely voted for that bill. And so we need, not just reform of the state agency and reform of our Medicaid budgets. We need reform on that campaign finance side as well, so that, these nonprofits and these for-profit Medicaid organizations can't put millions of dollars into politics. I mean, I think it's important that folks know that the people who voted yes, the 56 lawmakers and the governor who voted yes and signed the bill into law, collectively have received nearly $2.8 million in campaign contributions from Medicaid organizations. Do voters really think that we were going to get any kind of alternative plan when you've got 6 power PACs putting $2.8 million into politicians to get them to vote yes on the bill that they crafted in a back room? Never. That's not going to happen. And so, we are being funded by people who say, I can't give you more than $5 because, we're broke. Our premiums are $1,200 a month. So we have lots of just everyday Oregonians who've, gone online and made a donation at our stophealthcaretaxes.com website. And we're grateful for that. But largely we have, personally self-funded this with friends, family, and, companies that we know that really do care about Medicaid and want to see this funded in a more fair manner.
Great. What do you want to, what can I do to help you and the listeners besides donation? Is do Facebook and Twitter, is that a large help for you to help get the word out to vote no?
It is. So we are on Facebook. That's where the largest part of our kind of daily conversation about posting up news articles. And today we posted out one of our voters pamphlets. We're going to start posting our no voters pamphlets from the people who authored them. Like the page, share the comments that the commentary that you see on there with your friends. Go to the Oregonian website, the newspaper's website, and just type in Measure 101 or Medicaid or House Bill 2391 and go read some of the archived articles that they've written all summer. Read the editorial that from the Oregonian that says that college students and our K-12 budget should not bear the burden for this tax. As of today, we have 2 newspapers that have come out and begun the endorsement process of saying, are they going to be on the yes or no side? And the first 2 papers in the state to come out with no endorsements and supporting us. Ben Bulletin strongly said no on 101. Baker Herald today just came out with a no on 101. And so we expect that, the editorial boards will do this and come along with us because we're bringing real solutions. This is not like Republicans in Congress and, we're going to repeal and replace Obamacare and, and then there's no replacement. We actually have solutions. And so, I feel like that makes this whole thing a little more credible. But a free thing you can do, write a letter to your editor. If you're paying crazy train costs for health insurance this year, if your employer's coming to you saying, I can't afford to give you health care next year, you know what? Vote no, but then write a little letter to the editor and tell your neighbors why you're voting no. I mean, those are all very free things that you can do from a very grassroots perspective to help us kind of beat this back. Because ultimately, we're not going to spend $2 million on a campaign in the next 50 days. When 1/5 of our economy is healthcare, and you've got special interests like the head of the hospital association who takes home $1.2 million of a paycheck. When you have contracts, lobbyists with $300,000 a year contracts, when you see our for-profit Medicaid organizations sell for $130 million, they love the status quo. The status quo lines their checkbooks. And so it's tough to go up against this industry. It's tough for Representative Hayden, who's also a medical professional, to go up against his own colleagues. But, for us, it was worth it. And the 90,000 people who took the time this summer to sign a petition, they were awesome. And they, and so, yeah, I'd rather have an army of people who can write me a $3 check than, some of those folks who are writing those bigger checks, because at the end of the day, we all get one ballot, and on election day, we're all equal.
Yes, and that's all that matters. Well, I'm going to tweet out, I'm going to share on Facebook all of the websites, the social media handles, and encourage all the local Oregonians that I know a ton of them, and I can feel in my heart that this is the right thing to do, and that they feel the same way, because people are sick and tired of tax. Like you said earlier, is the taxpayer being an ATM. We're not an ATM, and we're sick and tired of it. So I look forward to hopefully bringing you on again before the election, and just getting out at our grassroots and promoting No on 101.
Well, the last thing I just share is, Oregonians just sent a really strong message last November when nearly 60% of Oregonians said no on Measure 97. Go back and, compare the voters' pamphlets. The same exact people who were, yes for a $6 billion tax increase that Oregonians said no way are the same exact people who have filled the voters' pamphlet statement once again. It's just like they almost, rinsed and washed them off and put them back up there again, with the same scare tactic messages. I mean, this is a group of Oregonians who will stop at nothing to tax the hell out of us. And enough is enough, right? And voters just told you no. I'm hoping voters stand up and tell them no again. We will find a way to fund Medicaid that works and to hold that agency accountable. So I really appreciate your time.
Awesome. Thank you so much for coming onto the program. You're listening to Common Sense Radio on the Lanterns Radio Network.
You're listening to the Lanterns Radio Network. We are the network dedicated to empowering the individual, illuminating the truth, defending American exceptionalism, and inspiring future generations. Stay connected and get involved at lanterns.buzz. For great radio, get commentary and news of the day. Lanterns.buzz.
In every rising of the sun, my purpose was to be thankful to be alive. I was even more thankful for the blessings that came with this life, specifically Virdis, my wife. But that came to an end when Aklavane and her minions violently took her away from me. So my new purpose in this life is to gather all the pieces of the Stone's Heart so I can defeat Aklavane and get back my bride. Join me as I travel to new worlds, making new friends and avoiding old enemies. Read more about my story in the first 2 books of the Stone's Heart series, which are now available on Amazon.com in Kindle format. The first book is The Quest for Savit Varda, and that is followed by The Heart of Pagaila. Stone's Heart is more than a fantasy and a sci-fi quest. It's me fighting to get back my precious wife, despite the overwhelming odds against me. Stone's Heart. Join, explore, and believe.
Welcome back to the program, folks. You're listening to Common Sense Radio on the Lanterns Radio Network. Wow, what a show I have had for you this evening. First, Chris Salcedo. You can find him at chrissalcedo.com. Excellent, well thought out conservative. Then I have State Rep Julie Parrish, who was just in a phenomenal interview. I really enjoyed sitting down and talking with her about the issues in my home state. And I hope that you gained a lot of information from that. And I hope that you can even just go on that Facebook page. StopHealthCareTaxes.com is a website. And the same is their Facebook page, Stop Healthcare Taxes. As you can tell, Susan is on vacation this week. So I had to go solo. I know I braved. I was scared. I was sad. But I made it through. Susan will be back next Monday, same time. And a lot of stuff going on in the world right now. And I just wanted to switch things in a different direction. I wanted to talk about different things with Chris, and he was just spot on. You know, the NFL has been a huge issue that to me, because I was such a big NFL fan, and I honestly am sad that they have really turned everything that they fought for with promoting the veterans into a social justice warrior cesspool. Here's the thing. Here's the thing. The difference between progressives and myself. I value more opinions. I want more conversations, and that's kind of the direction I'm kind of have been going towards. Personally, is I want to engage with people. I have a lot of friends that are on both sides of the aisle. I have a lot of friends that wanted Bernie Sanders to win. We can talk politics in a respectful manner, each of us, and then we can, and honestly, we don't talk a lot of politics. We both know, with the many friends that I have, that we're on opposite spectrums, but yet we still are respectful. We still treat each other like anyone, how you would want to treat other family members. I mean, I have had where I'm friends with people on Facebook that I'm coworkers with, and that the 2016 elections, really, I saw that their true faces came out. They won't even look at me. They won't even talk to me. And I find that sad because I know what their opinions are. They shared them on Facebook. They say them out loud. But I don't treat them any different. I go, okay, and I tell them my point of view. Maybe they don't want to hear that point of view, but I'm going to say it to them, and I just go on about my business. Anyways, it's been a interesting couple weeks in the news. You have, on one hand, the world is ending with North Korea and the absolute intercontinental ballistic missile test. You have everybody is going to be kicked off health insurance from the individual mandate repeal. You have, I mean, we could go on and on and on. But tonight, let's not. Those are just some of the topics that have been, all over Twitter, have been all over places lately. So that's why tonight I wanted to bring to you something else, because you can go to anybody else and listen to the news of the week. Here at Common Sense Radio, Susan and I want to bring a different perspective. I want to bring a different perspective. I want to have fun, and I think that's what we've been doing here. And I hope you continue to listen to us. I hope that you enjoy this show. Anyways, that's it. I will see you guys next week. You're listening to Common Sense Radio on the Lanterns Radio Network.
You're listening to the Lanterns Radio Network. We are the network dedicated to empowering the individual, illuminating the truth, defending American exceptionalism, and inspiring future generations. Stay connected and get involved at lanterns.buzz. For great radio, get commentary and news of the day. Lanterns.buzz.